guys, it's Mel with S&J Designs for You. I figured while the kiddos were doing their morning Zoom meetings for school and the 3-year-old was still asleep, and I'm also drinking my coffee. I haven't quite woken up yet, even though I've been up for a few hours. I would do a quick tutorial on how to dome your finished resin pieces after paint. So we had done this pumpkin a few days ago, and there was a lot of requests in our Facebook group. If you haven't joined our group, you really should. It's not just that we sell molds, but we also give tips and tricks in there, and you can also see some of the amazing work that our crafters are doing. So make sure that you join our Facebook group. But one of the biggest things was, hey, I'm having some issues doming my finished pieces after I paint. And so this particular tutorial is going to be on UV resin doming. You can dome with regular resin, such as casting or coating. But this particular video, I'm going to focus on UV resin just because it's quicker, and that's kind of the amount of time that I have. Some people do use liquid latex on the back of their pieces. Put a really thin layer and you allow it to dry. And once it's dry, then you dome, and then if anything kind of over spills onto the sides, it won't go underneath your pieces. You could actually pull the liquid latex off, and then that extra resin that went over the back will come off as well. But for time's sake, and because I've been doing this for a while, I'm going to just go ahead and show you how I UV resin my finished painted pieces. So, I've talked about these little paintbrushes before. I get them from Amazon. You can get them from Michael's dollar store. But let me see if I can show you. I get like just a bunch of them. It's like 144 of them in here. I use these to dome my pieces. I use them to paint the pieces. I just don't like to have to clean anything. I do, and I have sometimes used these silicone brushes to do it. You just apply a really thin layer with the silicone brush, and you put this underneath the UV light, and when it's cured, you can just pull it off and then reuse it. And then they also sell like different size ones. I don't know if you can see that, but they sell different size brushes where you could kind of just, paint your UV resin on, stick this underneath the UV light, and then you'll be able to get it off fairly quickly. So let's get started. Excuse how gross the bottle is. I use it quite a bit. This is like a huge bottle of UV resin that I've had for a while. So you want to just start in the middle, kind of work your way out. With these paintbrushes with UV resin, as long as it doesn't hit the light, I can usually use these brushes a few times before I toss them. Just because UV resin will not dry on this until it hits the light. So I just make sure I don't put it by the light, and then I'll wipe it with a paper towel after I coat the piece, and then I'll just keep reusing it until it kind of gets hard, and then I realize, oh, okay, well, the resin has finally adhered to the bristles of it. So you start in the middle, and you just kind of want to work your way out. Make sure you have good lighting wherever you're at. Like right now, I'm kind of having to really take a look. But you're going to want to start in the middle, work your way outward, and then just kind of go over the piece, just like you're painting it. The great thing about UV resin, it's a little bit on the thicker side. So it somewhat stays in. Sometimes you'll see some pulling on the edges, which is what I'm seeing now. And I just keep going back over it until it doesn't do that anymore. Okay, so I can see that I need a little bit more. Bubbles will usually pop. You might get a couple of bubbles that come out when you first do it. They will pop. So there, I'm doing some coats. I can see it pulling from the edge again. So just keep pulling it back out. And then I'm gonna put a little bit more right here. Now with this, you can see that it has a hole in it. I'm just really cautious. I do have some of those silicone plugs. I can show a picture at the end of the video. But there is some silicone plugs. I'm just really cautious to not really go into the hole of that. Just go really slowly and take your time. So again, make sure that you're going towards the edge of your piece. It's going to want to kind of pull to the middle. And then what I do, I have like this, so I have two things. I have a UV light that goes over it for like a minute. And then I also have this UV flashlight. And so I've been known to use both, usually after I do this, because I don't want it to keep pulling like it is to the center. I go ahead and as soon as I get that final coat around it, I'll hit it with the light. And then that way it kind of sets it a little bit. It'll kind of set it a little bit and stop it from pulling to the center. So that's a little tip and trick. So if you can get one of these little UV flashlights, that will help you stop some of the pulling that you might be having on the edges. Okay, so I just do it just for a few seconds, and then I go and put it underneath my light. It's upside down. So I'm going to go ahead and cure this under my light. I bought this little UV lamp because the one that I have to the right of me, the heat was just too much sometimes for it. So I ended up buying this lower wattage one. And the great thing about this is I could just kind of put it over the mat. I don't have to move the mat and do all of this stuff. But let's let this sit there. So I'm going to do it for, this lamp only goes up to 90 seconds. So I'll do that 90 seconds, 2, maybe even 3 times, just to make sure that the UV resin is set, and then I'll go ahead and come back in just a few minutes. All right, you guys, so we're back. And so I usually do a second coat. Sometimes I don't, but on this particular piece, I'm going to do a second coat of UV resin just to make sure if I have any dimpling or if there was a little bit of pull from the edges, I can get that on this second round. And it's just thin coat. You don't need to like put so much on it or it's just, you know, running off the side. Just thin coats until, you know, you have no more dimpling, you have no more pulling. And then, you know, just, and this really is to make sure that your pieces, after you paint them, you're not worried about them peeling, the paint peeling off, especially if it's something that's being used a lot, like phone grips. I know my keychains get tossed around quite a bit. So you just want to kind of do this to ensure that your pieces don't have the paint rub off. Hi guys, so the UV resin's fully cured. This is how I dome with UV resin. I know that some of you guys are having some issues with bending. This literally just came out of the light. It's not bending at all. I did have issues with bending when I was using a higher wattage lamp. It was actually producing heat and it was basically making the casting resin soft underneath the UV resin, and so it would bend and warp and it just wasn't good at all. So I ended up switching to a 36 watt UV light that was just a small little cheap light, and honestly that light works better for doming. I'll go ahead and drop a link to the light that I use inside of the comments. Remember, again, I don't endorse anything. I'm just letting you guys know what works for me. I'll also put a link to the brushes that I use, as well as the little flashlight that I showed you earlier in the video, and the UV resin that I'm using. But you can see everything's dome. Don't get discouraged if you start to have some pulling on the edges, or you know, you feel like you're having some issues. Oh, you can always message me through the Facebook group, as well as it's okay to keep putting a couple layers on. Sometimes I put 2, 3, sometimes even 4 layers, really thin layers of UV resin over the top in order to get that smooth finish. So don't be worried about that. As long as you're getting good coverage and you're constantly moving your brush around and moving the resin around, you should be good. So thanks for watching, you guys. Take care.